Hope. Hope is one of the theological virtues. This means that a continual looking forward to the eternal world is not, as some modern people think, a form of escapism or wishful thinking, but one of the things a Christian is meant to do. It does not mean that we are to leave the present world as it is. If you read history, you will find that the Christians who did most for the present world were just those who thought most of the next. The apostles themselves, who set on foot the conversion of the Roman Empire, the great men who built up the Middle Ages, the English evangelicals who abolished the slave trade, all left their mark on earth precisely because their minds were occupied with heaven. It is since Christians have largely ceased to think of the other world that they have become so ineffective in this. Aim at heaven and you will get earth thrown in. Aim at earth and you will get neither.
Hi, my name is Mark Gaudry, and I will be giving the sermon today. So I hope you're ready for a great time. I'm sorry, guys. I feel like I look ridiculous. Just give me a second. I'll go and put on something a little bit better, not so silly looking, way too formal. I do want Curtis and Glenn to know, though, that I nailed this tie the first time. 1 second, I'll be right back. Better. I feel like I can breathe, dress normal. So I guess before we start, I'll say I'm recording this live at home, but if you do hear kids running around, making loud noises or screaming, consider that like being back at church for the normal Pine Ridge experience. And do remember to like, subscribe, swipe up, spin and... Oh, we don't do that? Okay, we don't do that. I've just been told, just watch the video and try to enjoy. Christmas is over, so now what? We've got a few more days until 2021 happens. And we could just go on complaining about how terrible of a year 2020 really was. And there's actually quite a few pretty funny memes from 2020, and I don't know if you've seen any of them, but they did on occasion crack me up. But is that the sum total of our 2020? Well, let's put it a different way. Is that the attitude that we as Christians should have towards hardship? Humor is good, but the sheer volume I've seen and heard about how this was just the worst year ever, it crosses a line of negativity that I think we need to be careful about. We just celebrated Christmas, and think of all the things that we said or sang about leading up to December 25th. O God, our help in ages past, our hope in years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast and our eternal home, or from O Holy Night. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Or O little town of Bethlehem, the hope and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. There's a lot of hope mentioned there. We spent the better part of a month trying to remember that Christmas is about Jesus and the hope that he brought to a troubled world. And if we pack that away with the Christmas tree and join everyone else in the hopelessness of 2020, can we really call ourselves Christians? Well, that being said, where we find our hope matters too. It's not as though when the calendar turns to the new year that anything significant is going to change. To think that life becoming better is a result of just swapping out a piece of paper on your wall, it's a little bit silly. But if not the new year, then what? Well, we're all tracking that vaccines are coming, and with that comes the hope that we can put this bizarre year behind us. And this, at least, is based on more than the concept of just marking time. But while it's good to have optimism about COVID-19 being a thing of the past, people not dying because of it, or the economy getting back on track, this will only bring us back to where we were before everything started. It's still a world filled with people looking for hope or ignoring their need for it. To be clear, I do hope that this vaccine takes care of the whole COVID thing, but I don't put my hope in that to fix this life or to be ready for the one to come. Maybe think of it this way. Nobody survives life. On a long enough timeline, everyone's chance of survival drops to zero. COVID-19, similar to wars like the First or Second World War, it really just threw that fact in a lot of people's faces who just weren't used to dealing with it. So while they're trying to answer the important questions that they might not have dealt with before relating to purpose or meaning or mortality, they realize that they just don't have the foundation of hope, which helps to provide the answers. Having a vaccine will absolutely save lives, and that is such a good thing. But it won't answer those questions for anybody. It'll just allow us to tuck them all back away where they were before this whole thing started. So if hope isn't found in a vaccine or longer life, or normal life as it was or will be again, we're back to Christmas hope. But maybe first we should clarify what exactly it is we're talking about, just so that we mean the same thing. Here's what I mean when I'm talking about hope. We should all be able to agree that something in this world just doesn't seem right. Not as it should be. And it's the same with each one of us. There's something about me, by myself, that isn't the way I'm supposed to be. And the Bible confirms this when it talks about Adam and Eve's sin in the garden, and the hereditary sin that's born into each one of us, and to nature. But I think everyone in the world can also sense this, regardless of whether they've read Genesis or believe exactly what I believe. Hope is that thing inside of us that longs optimistically for the solution to that brokenness, and ultimately only finds fulfillment in the atoning sacrifice that God gave us through Jesus Christ. In John 10, it says, "Therefore Jesus said again, 'Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full.'" Well, there have been other attempts to replace the hope of Jesus with something else. Communism seeks to provide hope through shared effort, achieving shared social perfection. That failed. Materialism seeks to provide hope with the idea of always achieving and attaining just a little bit more, and the idea that that will satisfy. But it's failing. Philosophies like Stoicism, they try to detach emotions from everyday life in an effort to provide a calm reality, bereft of disappointment. But even the great Stoics like Marcus Aurelius freely admitted that something greater must exist for life to have meaning. So let's pause and take stock of where we are. 1, Christmas is over. 2, 2020 was not very fun and made staying hopeful difficult because 3, everyone was faced with this idea of death and mortality and the realization that something isn't quite right in our life. 4, a vaccine's going to be great, but it doesn't solve any of the mortality or hope or purpose questions. It just lets us ignore them for a little bit longer. But 5, During Christmas, we repeatedly claimed that Jesus brought hope to all people, which 6, he did, unlike any other attempts that we've thought up. And so 7, so what does that mean? In 1 Peter 3, it says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." And this is the part, if I'm honest, that I struggle with. I mean, if I truly believe that Jesus brought the only hope to all humanity for life that is full, I have to help people discover this. So why do I doubt the message and believe that the people that I interact with are going to think that I'm silly when I talk about it? Well, part of it for me might be that I grew up in a Christian home, and so I don't really have much to compare of a life without hope and a life with hope. But another part of it, and maybe the more important part for me, is that we live in a Western culture. And in this culture, the Enlightenment has led us to value science, hard facts, and rationalism, which are all valuable and have their place. But they tend to render anything outside of their realm as quaint or weak-minded or just unneeded. So when I'm in a situation where I can talk about the hope that Jesus brings, to live more closely aligned with God and how God originally created us to be, I have to fight through this feeling of inferiority. In its best form, it's that feeling that it can help me have a little bit more humility. But in its worst form, it shuts me up and it keeps me from saying anything at all. But here's what I need to remember. What rings more true in my soul, in your soul, is it this quote? God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off of us? Or this one. Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand, and we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. Well, the first one is Friedrich Nietzsche. The second is Romans 5. Our world, our neighbors, people we interact with, they operate on the assumption that Nietzsche was right. We operate, or we should operate, on the fact that Christ's birth, life, death brings our broken soul peace, grace, hope, glory, and love from our Creator. Nietzsche's writing was meant as a lament for our modern age. It's not the truth, and it empties our souls. And here's the key. If you believe what it says in the Bible, all this stuff that I've been quoting, like in 2 Corinthians 3, where it says, "Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit." If you truly believe that, then you believe that deep down, everyone is longing for God to fill them up, to fix their brokenness, to renew their spirits. Then the so what of this whole sermon, it becomes really simple. Really hard to put into action, but really simple. In Matthew 5:14-16, it lays it out. "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." I want to leave off with two more thoughts. First, have you ever finished a pop and just hulked out on the empty can? Just smashed it? It's great. It makes you feel like the strongest person in the world. There's no problem crushing that thing. Now, have you ever tried to do that on a full can? Bit of a different story, right? Full cans, they don't cave in so easily. Christians are meant to be full cans. Other cans should be looking at us and wondering how it is that we're not being crushed by this world. And that's when we can look at them and remind them of all this hope that we just sang about for the last month. We can remind them that we're full of, wait for it, Hope-a-Cola. Lastly, in case your next thought is, yeah, but who am I to tell of God's hope? Have you seen me? My life is a wreck. My kids are crazy. I'm barely keeping this thing together. Maybe you're just a Senators fan. Remember this. In 2 Corinthians it says, "For what we preach is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, 'Let light shine out of darkness,' made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. But we have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." Jars of clay. Other translations say earthen vessels, or my personal favorite, clay pots. It's this idea of crummy, throwaway, fragile jugs used to hold the world's most expensive drinks. Like serving $50,000 Dom Perignon in a paper cup. But we have this treasure in clay pots. Oh, you're not perfect? You have imperfections? Well, that's perfect. Because now you can really showcase what's inside, what it is that keeps you from being crushed. May we be a church full of full pop cans and paper cups. Thanks.